So really quickly, I want to give you an overview of the Fatherhood Partnership. The Fatherhood Partnership is a learning community that we've been convening. This is our second year. The idea around the partnership is to build the capacity of participants to offer father-specific parent education and support groups. So the topics that we cover are really framed in a way that this is how you have small group discussions with fathers about whatever the topic is. So today's topic is the father wound. So our presenters will be framing the information that they're sharing in a way that this is how you talk to dads about the father wound in a small group setting. The Fatherhood Partnership was really meant to create father-specific parenting education and support groups. So participants in the partnership, the idea is that they have made a commitment to offering these father-specific parenting education and support groups. So we've got a lot of people on the call today. Not all of you have been part of the partnership from the beginning, but there are several of you who have been part of the partnership from the beginning. So we're hoping that you guys are moving forward with establishing your groups. Obviously, the things will look very different now than they would have looked back in September when we started this partnership, when we launched the 2019-20 partnership. So you should be thinking of ways that you can convene fathers virtually, because that's where we are right now. We don't know when we're going to be back to meeting in person. I just received an email from our CEO that our office is actually going to be closed until after Labor Day. So we will not have any Fathers Core trainings in person until at least after Labor Day. So that's kind of a brief overview of the Fatherhood Partnership. I'm excited that you guys are all here to learn about this. And when we've had these discussions in the past about the father wound, it's helped folks not only professionally, but personally. We all have life experiences, some positive, some not so positive. So a lot of these trainings support providers, again, like I said, professionally and personally. And I think this training will do the same. So that's kind of an overview of the Fatherhood Partnership. We've got some program updates. Many of you already know that we have had to reschedule the 2020 Fatherhood Summit. So it's now going to be the 2021 Fatherhood Summit. We had to postpone it until June 2021. Ideally, we're looking at the Saturday before Father's Day. I'm not sure how many of you on the call were able to be part of our 2019 Fatherhood Summit in last March 2019, excuse me. But we are definitely moving forward with planning the 2021 Summit, and hopefully this pandemic will have resolved itself by then, and we'll be in a better place to come together so that we can learn together and support fathers together. So that's kind of an update on the Father's Core. We are in the planning stages for our 2021 learning communities, which at this time will be happening online until further notice. Be aware that an end of year survey will be going out tomorrow. So there's going to be a survey for this workshop that we will provide the link for you in the chat box at the end of the workshop this afternoon. And then tomorrow you will get, for any participants who have attended at least 3 of our Fatherhood Partnership trainings, there will be an end of year survey to help us get a better idea of your experience in the partnership, and also to find out more information on where you are with your fathers groups. There was also a participant survey. I know we survey a lot, but we got to learn from what we're doing. So there was also a Fatherhood Partnership participant survey that went out several weeks ago, where we are gathering information about the groups that you guys have started to help us get a better idea of what's going on in the communities. Obviously, they look very different now than they did several months ago, but we would like you to respond to that survey. If you haven't received it, then you probably weren't on the list to receive it. But for those of you who are, you should have it in your email boxes. Let me know and I can resend it, or Dara can resend it. Normally, we have a end of year celebration in June. Again, not sure what that's going to look like. Maybe we do a virtual celebration, not sure. but we are trying to figure that out. So more to come on that. And that's about it. If there are no questions, which I don't see any, I'm going to turn it back over to Dara for the icebreaker.
Thanks, Kevin. So I have typed into the chat a little check-in question. So if you could go to the chat box and type in 1 or 2 words that best describe how you are feeling while we continue to shelter in place. So type in 1 or 2 words about how you're feeling as we continue to shelter in place. Someone said peaceful. Someone said over it. I'm with the over it. Someone said calm, numb. Someone said overwhelmed. Some of us said grateful, hopeful, and overwhelmed. Someone said going back to my roots. Blessed, but stressed. Hopeful, uncomfortable, and grateful. It's this dichotomy, right? Stressed, concerned. Someone said saving money. Exhausted and thankful. Teaching and working full-time is stressful. I second that. Trying, busy. Overwhelmed, need other people than family. Depends on the day, but healthy. Confused, but thankful. Blessed to be healthy. Blessed. Enjoying with the kids at home. So feel free to use the chat like as an amen corner. If you hear something that you feel like is like, yes, just put it in the chat. If you have a question, put it in the chat. If you just want to, if we were in together popcorn something out, put it in the chat. So I'll be monitoring the chat, and Jason and Kelvin will ask if there's anything that I need to read out or question. So feel free to ask those questions. I'm going to turn it back over.
Thanks, Dara. And if you do have a question that you'd like, you can, like Dara said, use the chat, or you can also use the raise hand feature, and then either Dara or myself will jump in and call on you to give the presenters an opportunity to respond to you directly. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Potts and his co-presenter, Jason Seals, so they can introduce themselves, and we can go ahead and get started. And I just want to point out to you gentlemen that we are on time. So I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Kelvin Potts. I am the CEO and founder of Positive Communication Practices. Got to tell you right up front, this is kind of awkward. I mean, it's like looking at a computer screen, so it's real different than what I'm used to. So bear with us as we move through this transition. I'm a real hands-on, eye-to-eye, body contact, eye contact kind of guy. You know what I mean? It's different for me, so we're going to bear this out. So, Positive Communication Practices is an organization that focuses on community transformational practices, and our main programming is with youth of color, incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. We work in maximum security units at the Juvenile Division of Justice, Juvenile Division of Justice, as well as provide, sessions and trainings and workshops such as this Father Wound that we're doing today for Kevin. I'm also an original graduate of the Father Corps cohort that started in 2013. That's how me and Kevin Vermont met. So, real briefly, because I know we want to move on and get to the heart of what we're doing here. It's really not about me. But, what brings me to this work is this work has started as a ministry for me. And it began to unfold and develop into a community organization and that provides services here. It started as a ministry. It still is my ministry. I believe I was, drawn to this work. I was called to provide these services and share what I know and deepen my understanding and healing practices that we provide. Okay, so I'm gonna let Jason do his introduction, and then we're gonna move on. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. It's good to be here today. I think what I'll say is Bobby Kelvin and I have done this work for quite some time, and we're accustomed to doing this work face to face. And so there might be slight glitches here and there around transition just because we're doing this on this platform. So be patient with us. Nevertheless, what brings me to this work is a father, being a father, and being someone that's actually what I would consider to be recovering from this fatherhood wound. I had a very personal experience that I'll share with you all later around my fatherhood experience. But what allowed me to be able to show up differently is being in the room while my son was born, and seeing him into this world. It changed how I understood myself. It changed how I understood my purpose, and how I began to do this work very differently. Prior to having my son, I had been doing work in the community with young Black and brown boys for quite some time. But when I had my own, I began to think about my work differently. I began to think about the lives that I was impacting very differently. And so it's a very personal topic today. And so we'll share, and hopefully all that we share will be beneficial. So give thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna go into this screen share piece because we have some objectives we want to go over about the training for today. Let's see. Okay. And there. And go here. There we go. You know, I'm accustomed to looking at people and asking them, how y'all doing? So maybe everybody can do like a thumbs up if you're doing okay. And most what I'm looking at the bigger screen, it's look like a lot of people are just, their name is just there. There's no.
They looking at you though, Baba.
Okay, all right. I see a bunch of boxes, and that's really kind of really interesting. So anyway, slideshow from the beginning. Okay. So, you know, the father rule, this is, then we'll read the slides so we kind of get on board.
Kelvin, we're not seeing your slide deck.
No?
No, we've got your meeting registration form is up.
Yeah, you have to click to the PowerPoint.
See it now?
No, sir.
Kelvin, minimize your internet screen page.
Excuse me?
The internet, the whole page, you have to minimize that whole image, the registration. So if you hover up to your right corner, you see like the little minus symbol, click on that to minimize your screen. That'll take you back to your desktop.
Okay, I don't, something's wrong here. It's not happening.
The easiest thing to do is to stop screen share. And then when you screen share again, look for the screen that has the PowerPoint and click on that one, rather than trying to go to the one that has windows open.
Talk. That's it.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Got it.
How about now?
No.
No?
No, sir.
No.
What do you see on your screen?
I see meeting registration.
Okay, so you want to drop that down. You want to pull up the PowerPoint.
Oh, no, don't do that because that's going to. All right.
No, you good.
Try it one more time. How about this? How about that?
There you go.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry for the delay, folks. You know,
No. This is a part of these platforms.
from the beginning. Here we go. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so
No pressure, no pressure.
I'm gonna read this for you guys. There's a trauma wound affecting more people than drugs and alcohol combined. It cuts deeper than flesh and bone and works its way to the soul. It affects both the rich and poor alike without prejudice. It is the father wound, and it leaves a wake of destruction in its path more devastating than any natural disaster. The father wound. So here's a quick definition. The father wound is deficiency or absence of love from your birth father, whether intentional or unintentional. So just to say a few more words about this, you know, there's a lack of awareness in a lot of people that walk this earth and live and have relationships with their father or don't have them, and they're not aware that there's woundedness going on, you know. And me and Jason, like we said, we're going to have some personal stories about this. This touches home for both of us, you know. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So Jason, you want to go over the objectives with folks?
Absolutely. Go ahead and put all three of those up. So one, I think it's really important for us to offer you all a clear definition of what the fatherhood wound is. And, you know, when we talk about this wound, a lot of people think about the absence of a father, and they're thinking about a physical absence. But absence of a father could actually be someone that's actually in the home. Sometimes the absence happens because people are emotionally unavailable, maybe because they're consumed with work, maybe because of their own trauma. And as a result, the child is impacted. And usually the young person isn't getting what he or she needs. They're not getting that consistent love. Sometimes we've had parents that they've learned that being a parent means to provide. So they're more of a custodial parent, meaning that they provide food, clothing, shelter. But we know that in terms of our children, what they really need is physical touch, right? They need words of encouragement, words of validation, words of healing. And so the fatherhood womb is really representing a void that has come about over time because the child has not had that consistent love and engagement from their fathers. And so on multiple levels, we just have to be mindful that the fatherhood womb is reflective of an absence.
Okay.
And then the next one is we're gonna give some examples around the type of trauma that comes about. And so thinking about a father being absent, whether physically or emotionally, the result of that shows up differently. It showed up differently in myself than in some of the brothers that I grew up with. Baba Kelvin will share with his story. It showed up differently in him. And so it doesn't always look the same. And so we want to talk about how it looks and how it might manifest in young people or in fathers that we're serving and working with. And then we're very thoughtful that in this work that you all are doing, the level of engagement that's needed, we have to be intentional about. We have to be able to build relationships. We have to be able to create environments where people feel comfortable being able to unpack things that for us, we have terminology for it. We're very familiar with it. But for some folks, the wound is so deep that to even begin to talk about a father, that conversation gets negated as it's not even the issue. It's very common for young men to say things like, I have no thoughts about my father. I could care less if he was here. It doesn't bother me. Those are all what I would consider to be symptoms of that fatherhood wound. So we're going to give you all some tools and practices. So we hope that today, once you all are off of this Zoom, that you all have an opportunity to be thoughtful, but also have some tools to do a higher level of engagement. The fatherhood wound can be deceiving in the sense that a person can be high functioning and still be wounded. And so we want to make sure that people are mindful of how it looks and what you can do. Baba?
So, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about my personal experience with my father. I was happened to grow up in a household where my father wasn't present. I didn't have a opportunity to meet my father until I turned 15. I started, getting in trouble. My mom was raising us, and I started, getting in trouble, going to juvenile hall, and my mom sent me to stay with my father. So, my father had another family, and he wasn't really, available. He was off into his own world and doing his own thing. He's from the old school, and he believed that, you provide a shelter and a place to live and food, and that's what you get as a child. So, I didn't really understand how much I missed that particular comforting place that I wanted from my father until in my as an adult. And I started like dealing with some different self-destructive patterns. And once the self-destructive patterns were minimized or removed, I started getting in touch with that pain and that hurt and that acknowledgement that that was a big missing component for me. And I went to work on trying to, reheal that relationship. And me and my father had a long journey with that. It was a long journey. It lasted until the day he left. And he left here in 1999. But we were in love with each other when he left, and we were able to express that love. It took a long time. It took a lot of work, and it was very devastating at points in my life where I felt a real urge for my father's love and affection. And he even confessed to me that, he wanted the same thing. He just didn't know how to go about it. And he was just brought up a different way. His dad just didn't show him a lot of like love, hands-on love as well. So, this journey into this fatherhood training and workshop is very personal to me. And I feel like, it was designed for something for me to participate in as well. One more thing that I want to offer before I turn it over to Jason. We do some really impactful, engaging work with juveniles in custody in juvenile hall and maximum security units. And we can have a number of young men in a circle in a room. You can say we have 20 young men in that room. And if we ask the young men in that room, it's happened over and over and over again. We ask 20 young men in that room, who's the favorite guy in their life? 18 out of 20 are going to say their mom, their grandma. They're not going to say their dad. We've had young men, when we introduced the father idea, get up and just leave the room because they don't want to deal. So it's a real painful issue. I've actually seen some young men go back, from the session, just cry the whole time once we introduce the idea and the deep conversation. So it's a really touching idea and concept. And I think it really needs to be paid attention to, because it has a major impact on the young men in our society today. Thank you. Jason?
When I was born, my father was in a maximum security prison for attempted murder, theft, and burglary. And so for the first 9.5 years of my life, I had no intimate relationship with my father. I would write my father letters in prison. He never responded to one letter. I physically had my first introduction as being knowledgeable to be able to see him. I have pictures of him when I was a little kid and he was incarcerated. But the first time I can remember having engagement that meant something to me, I was like 9, going on 10 years old. And that was really hard because I was excited to meet him, but there was nothing there that connected us. And from that point on, I really didn't have a relationship with him. He wasn't, present for me. He lived in Chicago. I stayed in California. And it made me kind of disconnect from my emotions. It made me not emotionally available for my friends, families, romantic relationships. It actually stifled my growth emotionally. I remember being 30 years old and I called my father and I asked him, was he proud of me? And it made me think about how that was a kid in me. But the journey, because of my lack of relationship with him, made it where I couldn't hear a man's voice. A lot of times men would come into my life and want to give me advice or want to support me. There were men that were mentors and I couldn't hear their voice. No matter how loving they were, no matter how consistent they were, I could not hear their voice. And it wasn't until I was actually doing a training, preparing myself to work with some young people, that I had an emotional breakdown. And all of the feelings that I had repressed were coming up. And I didn't really know what it was until I was talking to one of my elders. And so for me, the healing really came through knowing that I was going to be a father and really beginning to work out some of the anger and some of the resentment that I had. I didn't want my son to have that energy. I didn't want my son to pick up on that pain. And so I give thanks for both my father and my son, because my son allowed me to heal some of that. And my father allowed me to love my son in a very different way. My son gets what I wish I would have gotten. And so this journey that we're sharing with you all could be generational. And it has a deep impact. So the boys and the men that we're working with, how they're showing up, sometimes there's no mindfulness of it. And so as we continue, I just hope that you're thoughtful that there isn't a one size fit all. We're going to give you some tools. But the way that, and Baba Kelvin can speak to this too, the way that I've been able to effectively do this work with young Black and brown boys is build a healthy relationship first. Offer parts of myself that I've healed myself, meaning that I'm able to share part of my journey that I've felt comfortable sharing, but also that it's not my first time sharing it, that I've done some work around some of those wounds and traumas, because a lot of times when we're wanting young people to share who they are, it's like we're asking them to jump into a pool, but we're not jumping in a pool with them. And so it's really hard to build intimacy when you're somewhat like a blank slate and you're asking them to be courageous to go into a place that you haven't yet ventured with them.
Get used to this technology stuff here, man. Just bear with me here. This computer screen conversations, like I said, can be an adjustment. Okay, we're going to go back to our slideshow. And let me know if everybody can see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So, what the hell's going on here? Okay. So we talk about the effects of the father wound. You know, we talked about it briefly. We're just going to have some real clear indicators of what, can happen when a person is subject to the father wound. It can produce low self-esteem and low confidence. Anxiety has been a response to the father wound. Low mood and depression definitely is subject to father wound a way of being. Anger and rage is a huge one. A lot of anger, a lot of rage, and quite often people aren't aware of, the level of their rage and in the core of it and why it's there. It's kind of like, especially like, we're speaking to, women and men, but especially men. In my community coming up, that if you weren't angry and you didn't display some type of anger, they had names they would call you, right? There would be a different way of showing up for you, right? It was real typical in my community when I was growing up to see guys that were angry. And quite often those guys weren't aware that the source of that anger was that disconnection with their father, because that pain hurt so bad. And underneath the anger is usually a bunch of pain. And that's just the way it is. That's my personal testimony. It's really clear. I was really angry at a point in my life, and when I uncovered what it really was, it was just really hurt really bad. Okay, sometimes parents will repeat the same pattern with their own children. That's one of the consequences of the father wound. The reality can be distorted based on your own consciousness and the way you see life and the way you visualize life coming up and your response to the trauma around you. It could be distorted based on your experiences. you could be emotionally unavailable, because it's hard for some people quite often that experience this level of trauma and pain to be available, because it's scary. So what happens is, like, people will have, it's called, you get detached from the emotions, and you feel abandoned. So it's hard to get close to people because you think they're gonna leave you, because that's what your dad did, or that's your dad wasn't around, So like Jason explained, limited interaction with men, it's hard to trust men when the primary man in your life is not somebody that, you had a lot of trust for, so those are the, some of them.
Bob, but let me also share that I think that as providers, it's really important to watch and to be observant, because something like anxiety, people don't often talk about. When people have, low self-esteem, esteem meaning value of self. When people don't value themselves, there's not many people walking around saying, I don't value myself. But how it shows up is in actions. Less likely to be concerned about one's welfare. And so they tend to engage in more riskier behaviors. A lot of our young people dress really well, but you wouldn't know they had low confidence. So I think it's important that be mindful of the language that they use, how they're taking care of themselves. Even when I think about something like depression in the mental health field, there are some, what we consider to be some ideal behaviors, but, they talk about like being, uninterested in like sleep, or struggling with, having an appetite, or, a low sex drive, but that's not always the case. There's some people that are high functioning and depressed. And so it's important that if someone's high functioning and depressed, they're not going to exhibit the same behaviors as the DSM-5s. They're going to show like they, and I'll share with you, when I was depressed, if you're a Black man and you're working and you're putting in a lot of work, no one's going to question whether something's wrong with you. They're going to like, oh, he's just being productive. But that level of productivity could be an escape for not dealing with one's emotional state. So paying attention is really important, because sometimes behaviors can be deceptive, and people aren't speaking these things out. And so I think that's where the relationship comes into a play, but also creating a safe space. And kind of helping them to unpack it. And so we'll talk about some activities, but I just wanted to add that piece, Baba, that I just think the observing and relationship piece becomes really important.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate that. So we're going to move ahead, because there is a portion of this training where we actually involve the participants, and I want to get to that. We don't want this to be, total lecture. So, it's as tough as it is to be in front of this computer, as opposed to like being interactive, is going to be challenging. But I keep saying that because I want to acknowledge where I'm at. I want to be clear. I'm just keep checking in so y'all know where I'm at. All right, so we're moving on. So here's like a few ideas about group facilitation. Now, we're not saying we're experts. We're not saying that you don't know how to do this. We're just offering some suggestions. You've probably heard these before. And hopefully, this will be like another lesson or a repeat of some information that you may already know about. But we're going to go through this because this is what part of the training that needs to happen. The group facilitation is important, and how that's all set up and how that flows is really big. When you bring some young men or some men into a room, you got to be mindful of how to, pull that forward or push that forward. Okay. So the first suggestion is arrange the room as desired. They got the COVID-19 now, so I don't know how you're going to do that, 6 feet rule and all that mess. But, we usually have a nice circle or a half circle. That's what we normally do. Establish how you would like to greet the participants. You want to make sure they feel welcome into the room. We usually generally shake their hands and, introduce ourselves. Maintain safe learning environment, review agreements and expectations that have been established. Okay, it's important to have agreements because it can't just be a free flow group. We got to have some kind of regulations that say, hey, this is how we conduct a group. It's like group agreements. Jump in anytime you feel like it, Jason. Develop and maintain an age-appropriate relationship with participants. Like I said, our work covers different age groups, from youth to adults to, older adults. So you got to make sure that you're maintaining age appropriate relationships with these people. Let's see what we got here. Okay, as a facilitator, one chooses to walk the road of a teacher, guide, and positive role model. So what that means to me is that you're on the journey too. You're not like on a mountaintop delivering down the message from the mountaintop. You're actually a part of the whole a process of moving and healing and engaging in life choices and transformational practices. So it's like we're role modeling this, like we're concerned. We're not like we haven't arrived. It's not the end all as facilitator.
And what I'll add to that, Baba, is that to your point, we haven't arrived. But one of the things that happens is we engage in what I consider to be a lot of transactional relationships where, if you go to the doctor and you identify there's something wrong, they give you a prescription. You're a student, you go to school, they give you a lesson, you turn in your homework. It's very transactional. And for this type of work, a facilitator has to be willing to be in a relationship that's transformative. So transactional versus transformative. When it's transformative, it means that you are offering yourself below the surface. So your titles, the letters behind your name, the kind of car you drive, all of those things, that's above the surface. That doesn't challenge you to do anything that's offering yourself. We're talking about below the surface, like the things that are your personal values. The stories that make you up to be who you are, the personal people in your life, what helped to nurture your growth. Those are the areas that you have to be willing to process and share in a way that allows there to be an intimacy and connectivity. And as I said previously, you want to share things that you've already processed and it's age appropriate. But I think about myself because I've offered my story so many times because I'm processing it, but it's a way that they can kind of connect with me because sometimes they only see me as a professor. Sometimes they only see me as a father. They don't see me as being this person that's carrying this wound. They don't see me as someone that's recovering. And so me offering that now creates a different type of engagement.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Let's see what's happening here. Stank up thing. Okay. It is important that facilitators understand the significance of a self-care practice. A lot of times we as facilitators are offering a lot to, folks we're working with. It's like can sometimes be consuming and draining. So we need to have our own self-care practice, meditation, prayer, counseling, psychotherapy, whatever it takes, to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and being healthy, okay? Provide a safe place for relationship building and transformational engagement. Similar to what Jason was saying, for me, I have a level of transparency that's just really, it may be different than a lot of other facilitators because I want people to understand that this is a safe place. I'm going to be part of this safe place, sacred place too as well, and provide some transparency. You can see me model it, that therefore, offering a platform for transparency. Provide new information and teaching to support new experiences. There's always more information. There's always more research. There's always more stuff being unfolded about particular ideas, concepts, and consciousness. Okay. Maintain flexibility when engaging and presenting. Sometimes we'll go into a room of people and we'll have a whole document of this is timed out and everything. And then somebody throws a monkey wrench into the mix, and we got to go in a different direction. And as a facilitator, I think people need to understand, I'm sure, a lot of people do understand this, but we're going to reemphasize it, that sometimes, you can't go by the script. You got to go with the flow. You got to go where the group takes you, okay? Begin with a check-in and a check-out question.
Now, can I speak to this, Baba?
Yes, sir.
I think the purpose of this is not just, an activity. The check-in, if you're facilitating conversations, curriculum around the fatherhood wound, the check-ins are really an opportunity to gauge where folks are at. And if you're doing proper facilitation, you will be able to get a pulse, so to speak, of the room. I remember Bob and I were in juvenile hall, and we had spent time, you know, we always planned before we had our curriculum, and we were prepared. And we would do check-ins, and he's really big on emotional intelligence. And so having the young brothers be able to articulate what they're feeling. And so they can't say cool, 100, I'm good, because none of those are feelings. And so we will always push folks to, you know, to share their feelings. And I remember this one time we were going around the room, and you could just tell something was off, but people were sharing. And because of the relationship and the work that Baba has been able to do with the young brothers in juvenile hall, he just, you know, was like, we're not doing nothing else. We staying right here. And we were able to really unpack some stuff that had nothing to do with our curriculum, but the check-ins allowed him to be able to feel the pulse of the room rather than jumping right in. And that's really the benefit of the check-ins, is really beginning to understand, like, what is the room? What is the temperature like? Yeah. And, you know, I think those are the things that also build relationships. So it's so layered in terms of the work that we're doing, where the group facilitation around the fatherhood wound, you know, allows us to have relationships that then also allows us to begin to chip away at that wound and begin to have some of those important conversations that, you know, we'll share later in the video.
Thank you, sir. What's up, Dr. C? I see you up there, man.
How you doing?
All right. Okay, the curriculum is a helpful learning tool and not a substitute for therapy. So we're not going in there trying to be no psychotherapist for nobody, right? We're just going to be offering these tools. Okay, be mindful of personal beliefs. That includes religious and spiritual ideas. Me, myself, personally, I don't believe that any type of religious belief should be discussed during a session, because it's just something that, you know, people have different belief systems. Some people have, you know, different ways of looking at this whole idea of spirituality. Okay, so I think that's the end of that. Now we're going to move into a conversation, and Jason's going to kind of lead this conversation. I want you guys to listen to this or watch this video we're going to display. One of the young men that, you know, I had the pleasure of working with very personally for quite a few years. Just want you to hear him talk about him and his father's relationship. Uh-oh, wait a minute, my bad. We're gonna skip this. Here it is. Uh-oh. Technology.
Baba, let's go over those activities really quickly.
Okay, my bad. Okay. Like I said, you know, we got some activities here. Fatherhood session activity examples. So the first example we want to talk about is just an example of like a relationship building activity. It's called, it's an interview process where you put the people that you're working with in dyads. You know, dyad is like two people, and they get these handouts, and they get to interview the person that's in front of them and write down all these answers. It's like an icebreaker, but it's also a way of people kind of getting to know each other. So, you know, you put them in dyads, and they fill out this form, and they get in front of the room, and they introduce their new friend to the group. And usually get a few laughs, because there's some things in there that are designed to make folks laugh, you know, but it's also kind of revealing about who's in the room with you. You know, it's one of those things, okay? Icebreaker, kind of relationship building piece. Kind of do that at the very beginning of a cohort that's going to last, you know, for a little time. Okay, so Jason, you want to go through the man unbox? So you're muted.
Yeah, so the man unbox is an activity that is like an offshoot of a crossing the line activity. And so very similar to a crossing the line activity, it's basically a set of a set of statements that I've developed. You divide the room up. You have, you know, the participants stand on one side of the tape, and, you know, you use the statements. And as you go through the statements and they agree with them, you know, they'll cross the line. If they agree, they'll stay on one side. If they don't agree. And really this activity is to really challenge some of the unhealthy ideas and some of the ideas they have. And so some of it is just like about their experience. Some of it is about masculinity. Some of it is about their experience. And really, as a facilitator, this is me kind of learning more about who is in my group, learning more about what are their shared experiences, what are some of their struggles. I can use this almost like, here's how I'm extracting information on how I want to, you know, move the group forward or engage with the group. And after I would do, you know, the crossing the line, typically I would break them into small groups of threes and have them talk about, you know, which statement was most impactful or which statement stood out to you the most. And so after I had that peer conversation, we'll come back as a larger group and kind of talk about the activity, do a debrief. And what I'll say about these two activities, these are examples. Curriculum, sometimes people put an overemphasis on curriculum. You can have really amazing curriculum and folks that aren't skilled at facilitation, and that curriculum doesn't do anything. And so there has to be a balance between curriculum that begins to build relationships, curriculum that begins to allow their voice to be present. If you're facilitating and you're talking more, then something that you're doing isn't working. And so thinking about the type of activities that's gonna, you know, be a catalyst for that important conversation, thinking about how do you get them out of their head into their heart space. So with this activity, you know, the unmanned box, a lot of it makes them think about, but also I challenge them in an activity like this where I want them not to just share what's in their mental, but like, how did you feel? You know, what question brought up the most feelings? And so these activities are to be thought of as tools to help kind of, you know, create a pathway into that wound area that over time, when you have experienced a fatherhood wound, you learn how to, you know, not share. You learn how to dismiss it on a conscious level. And then for some people, it's not even conscious. It's just that they've suppressed it for so long. Me, growing up with my mother, I can tell you she was a very loving parent, very consistent, never spoke ill of my father. That was important. She never spoke ill of him. But because I had such a loving parent and because I had other people around me, it did allow me to suppress a lot of those feelings. And so a lot of times when folks would ask me, you know, about my father, I'd be like, I'm good. Like, he's living his life, I'm living mine. It was never much reflection. And so these activities is an opportunity for that type of reflection if they're done correctly.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, with the limited amount of time that we have, we're going to move into this exercise we want you guys to participate in. You know, generally this workshop, like Kevin Bermond said, we've done it a few times, maybe 4 times prior. It's usually like a 2.5, 3 hour workshop. So we're condensing it into like this 1 hour presentation, which has been really difficult, you know, because it's a very engaging and very deep topic. And maybe moving forward, there'll be a part 1 and a part 2 if we have to do a virtual situation. You know, I don't know, you know, this is just a lot to kind of put in 1 hour. So like I said before, there's a group of young men that, you know, we work with in the juvenile hall, and sometimes they come out and we maintain relationships with them. And I'm gonna have this young man, you guys pay attention to what he has to say about his relationship with his dad.
So I think my relationship with my father has contributed a lot to the way I acted out and I acted up during my high school years.
Can you increase the volume?
My grandfather, my father, and
Oh, okay. I have to increase. I thought everybody had their own volume.
No, you should probably start it over too. Thanks,
Okay.
Kelvin.
Let's see what the volume's like now.
so I think
How's
my
that?
relationship with my father has contributed a lot
Still can't hear it.
out and I acted
At all?
during my middle school.
A little bit.
Try increasing the
Yes.
volume on your computer, Kelvin.
And my family.
Okay.
So I think my relationship with my father has contributed a lot to the way I acted out and I acted up during my middle school and high school years. you know, my grandfather, my father, and all the men in my family have this tradition of using violence to correct behavior. So as I got older and they started seeing behaviors in me that they didn't like, they would beat me, they'd hit me. My dad, you know, my mother always used to tell me, and my brothers and my siblings used to tell me, like, oh, there's a lot of good memories. But for me, my childhood is full of, like, always seeing that belt buckle, like, this big coming out, and my dad walking straight towards me with just a red face and, like, angered expression. So as I got older and people started trying to tell me, like, that's not how you do things. No, I would start getting triggered, and I'd get mad, and I'd be like, you don't tell me how to do shit. You're not my, like, you know, and it start coming up in my head where it's like, you're not gonna treat me like my dad treated me, or you're not gonna talk to me like that. So then I would start to, that anger would start to come up, and I start projecting it on other people, right? And you know, it was something that we dealt with, not only myself, I can say it for my brother as well. You know, him and my dad actually got into a fist fight a couple of times. I almost got into a fist fight with my dad. So it was never a playing field where it was like, let's have a conversation, sit down and talk. Anytime I tried to, he just laughed in my face and be like, that's what the women do. So moving forward, I did have a big issue when using words and talking to people. Even with my partner now, I can't have certain dialect or conversations with her because I feel like, you know, I would get laughed at by certain people, but it's trying to break that barrier down and be like, okay, you know what? That's not how a man should act. That's not how a man should be with his significant other or with his wife or with his partner, with his brother, sister, or whoever it might be, right? Because I wouldn't approach my niece like that. And that's all a part of trying to understand all this trauma, all these things that have happened in the past that have built up and trying to change the perspective or the lens to break that cycle and change it. So
I hope everybody could hear that. Was it like real faint? You can hear it? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna, Jason, you're gonna take it from here?
Hello. If you
Uh-oh, there's something going on that shouldn't be happening. Okay, Jason, you're gonna do the breakout groups? You're muted. You're muted.
We're gonna put people into breakout rooms, and we have these 3 questions. And really, I really want you to focus on the first one and the second one, because I think it's really important for us to think about like what feelings came up for you in terms of hearing this young man talk about, he said he came from a culture of violence and how that might have shaped him. And then, you know, as a facilitator, like how might you go about actually engaging this young person, supporting this young person, right? So you all will be in breakouts for, are we a little behind on time? So I'll decrease the time. You all will probably have about, Kevin, can you give me a time check?
Yeah, it's 2:04 right now.
What time do we have though?
25 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So you all are being breakouts. We'll give you all about 10 minutes. So when the icon comes up for you to go into a room, please click on the button so you would know, so you'll then be transferred over to your room.
Jason, can you make Darren and I co-hosts so we can move in and out of the breakout rooms?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I don't see Dara. Where's she at? I just made you a host, but I don't see Dara. We lost her.
Looks like Guadalupe is asking for help. Let me see.
Jason, do you have me as a host?
No, you and I had to get kicked out so they can go in.
Yeah, I'm kicked out. Breakout rooms.
Seems like we have a few people that didn't go into rooms.
Well, you can see it, huh? So I looked on my screen, looks like 11 participants are here.
Jason, what are they supposed to be doing in the rooms?
They're supposed to be talking about their initial response to the video.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then how might a facilitator engage a young person that has that type of experience?
Okay. Can you go into room 3 and tell them that?
So these are the questions right here, Kevin. I don't know if they're in the rooms or not, in the breakout rooms. These questions should be in the breakout rooms.
I can't go into the rooms because I just gave you my.
Oh, no. I wanted to just be a co-host, but that's fine. Let me go into room 3, I believe.
How do we put these questions in the rooms?
We can't do that right now.
Okay. So Jason,
Yes, sir.
was the sound that low?
Just in the beginning,
Okay.
like in like the first like 20 seconds, it was kind of faint, and then it gradually increased.
Okay. So lesson learned, we got to figure out how to maybe get a microphone next time. I do have a microphone around here too.
I got one too.
Yeah, I could do it different. It's good. It's good learning. Good learning. You know. So what do you think about this Zoom stuff, man?
We still got some people that's not in their rooms. So you got a few people that are still out here.
Oh, okay.
There's
So
like
how,
6 people here.
how do you know people ain't
They
in the
can
room?
hear you know.
Okay. Okay. How you know people ain't in their room, man? I guess you got some technology, huh?
Nah, you could just see it. You could look and see. You can see people in there like who's not in their rooms. You know.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. Let's see how to do this.
Jason, you can go ahead and take back the host duties, and can you make Darren and I co-hosts?
Let me go
Or
back.
do I have to give them back to you?
You got to give it back to me.
So how do I do that? Is it the security?
Nah, if you go to the more area under by my name and participants.
Make host. Okay. Okay. Done.
Let me go in these rooms real quick and see what's going on.
Wow. So I think we need to end the room session in about pretty soon. Because we got to be wrapping up pretty quick here.
Right. Are you showing the video, the Will Smith video?
No.
Okay.
We got another video, one more video to show at the end though.
Okay.
It's a short one. It's probably like 1 minute.
That Will Smith video is heavy.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Mm. Breakout. Let me use my shit too. So Jason, when you want to bring them back?
How much time we got left? We ending at 2:30.
We got 10 minutes left.
All right, I'm gonna bring him back in a few minutes. I was just bouncing in and out of rooms, hearing dialogue. There's some good dialogue happening in some of these rooms, which is good.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to one other room and then I'm gonna come back.
Okay.
Some good conversations happening there, Baba. So I'm about to bring him back. You ready? Baba, you ready? You
Yeah, I'm ready, man. I'm sorry. I was.
So when they come back, we're gonna have people kind of share out really quickly. Was there any real quick share outs? And then the last part of the other part of the video, and then we're gonna be ready to rock out.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Bring them back.
coming back in less than a minute.
Oops. What the fuck am I doing here? This one right here must be the one.
You're not muted, Kelvin. Just be aware.
Hi, I got kicked out of my group. How do I get back in there?
Everybody got kicked out.
Okay.
You weren't left out. It was unilateral. Everybody got kicked out.
Okay, good. I thought I was the special one. Okay, fine.
So it looks like everybody is back. So we have, hold on. Nope, we're still populating. We'll give people a little more time. Still
We're back.
populating. Okay, so it looks like we have most people back. And so what I want to do is really quickly, if I can get a few people to share out. So I want to kind of hear from what people able to kind of discuss in their groups. And so I'm gonna try to do this the most effective way possible. And I think everybody is muted right now. But can somebody raise their hand if you want to share out? I think that's probably the most diplomatic way to go about it.
Jason, are you talking about use the hand raise function or?
Yeah, let's use the hand raise function.
Okay, so to do that, you guys, you click on participants and then you should be able to raise your hand. Nobody yet.
I'm assuming some people don't know how to use that feature yet. So if anybody just wants to chime in, please do so.
Okay, we got Cynthia.
Okay.
So go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, we were in, I was in group 5. And so we kind of came to a sense of saying that even if their biological father is not there, but basically having a positive role model, whether it be, the role model from a church, role model from some other organization like Big Brother clubs, things like that, that can be a great help in the young man's life of finding his self-confidence, his self-esteem, and being a competent man because he had a positive figure who became a surrogate for him to raise him and to show him the way he should go and the way a man is to be.
Guadalupe?
I think she's gone.
No,
No, she just raised her hand.
just raise her hand.
I think that, like we were talking, like with Cynthia, I think that sometimes we are expected, we expect for people to know how to do certain things, when in reality they have not been able to learn that. So when you encounter somebody who has the ability or those skills that can teach you how to develop healthy relationships and how to go about, feeling like a man or like a boy, regardless of the cultural norms or cultural expectations, then that helps you understand that, you are on the same boat as many other people. But you're on the path of, trying to work through a lot of the things. However, sometimes, we have to remember, not a lot of people know how to. Not a lot of people know how to do it. If they never had an example either from the mother or the father, to develop or to explore or to work on themselves to be a better person for themselves, then they need somebody to teach them the skills.
Baba, somebody just asked, can you put those questions back on the screen?
Absolutely. I will do my best. Let's see. Oops, they're not there.
Someone in the chat said something that was quite powerful. They said, we spoke about the intergenerational transmission of trauma and the importance of healthy relationships.
Okay.
Hi, yes. When I was watching the video, and we talk a little bit about it in our group, I thought about the person sharing their experience, and I also thought about his own father, and I'm wondering what happened to him, that he was acting or doing these things to him. So
absolutely,
I just felt like I could see their pain and their sadness. That's what I felt. I can just imagine how hard it will be for them. And then we engage in this conversation of how many times we transmit these things and becomes a cycle. And sometimes it's not as easy to break that. Especially in moments of stress, right? Like maybe we say, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to be different. I don't want that for my children. And then when the stresses come, right? When the challenges, then you are faced with the real feelings and the real pain.
Yeah.
It's really hard to act differently. And so we didn't come up with any solution. It's just like it's really hard in those moments. How in those moments or in others, having somebody that express love to us differently in a healthy way, or mentors or teachers, or those are very healthy relationships, and they have a lot of weight, a lot of impact, and it's really good. It might not necessarily fill all that void, but it makes us feel different.
Absolutely.
Value that we deserve to be loved and treated with respect.
Yeah. To your point, we don't take for granted that relationships and how to build them is a skill. And I think we have to be able to show our young people how to build those relationships and how to be vulnerable, how to have appropriate boundaries. And to that end, even this idea, like what it means to be a man, I think we're challenging that. I think so much of what it has meant to be a man historically allows for some of this to continue. The not being vulnerable, being in control, being overly aggressive, being objectifying women. I think some of these things, allow us to kind of posture in a way where we're not willing to really, go to that place where we feel wounded, because to cry or to emote, is often associated with being, feminine or, homosexuality or being soft. And so those things, are in our communities. And so they permeate for so long that it becomes very difficult for, people to be willing to venture off into that area. And that's why these spaces are so important. And like Baba Kelvin and I, we practice being very vulnerable with the boys, because if they see it from us, they're more likely to take that step. And it takes time. It's not going to happen in 1 or 2 sessions. Yeah. They have to see us being consistent and willing to do the work.
Okay, so Jason, I'm sorry, we got to wrap this up because we're getting out of here. Real quick though, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you just one more quick video. This is a young man that talked earlier. I've had the privilege of watching this young man come to the maximum security units back in 2013, get released in 2014, and apply himself with transformational tools and practices and mentors, and me as a personal mentor, and also Jason, Arnold Chavez, Arnold Perkins, different people have impacted his life. He's now a student and junior at UC Berkeley. I want you to hear about his progress consciously and where he is now today in relationship to his dad. I hope you could hear this.
So what has changed for me is is being able to be around other men who have a different way of expressing themselves, who showed me a different way, who allowed me to understand what the interaction between the son and the father should be like. So when I do see my father, I have a different way of addressing him, or I have a different way of handling the situation altogether. So now I'm happier with where I'm at. I'm not doing the things I used to. I'm not getting angry the way I used to. And I'm actually, to be honest with you, I'm embracing the pain. Sometimes I just sit down and I just get sad. And now I'm like, I'm not going to be mad that I'm sad. I'm going to be happy in a way that I'm sad, because now I can begin to express my emotions, begin to uncover who I am and what I can become or what I will become, right? Because I'm not going to add fuel to the fire. I'm going to put the fire out. And the next generation that comes within my family, or whoever comes behind me, is gonna have a different path to walk. They're gonna leave a different print in the sand. They're not gonna go and burn a village down. They're gonna go and plant a tree, whatever it might be. They're gonna give back to the world instead of knock down the world.
Okay, so that's the end of our presentation. Kevin? It's on you, Kev.
Thanks, Kelvin and Jason. That was a pretty heavy final video you showed, man. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all who attended and were able to stick with us. Be aware that Virve has just posted the link to the survey for this workshop in the chat box. So please take a few minutes, click on that link and complete the survey. We really need your feedback to help us plan for future trainings. You can let us know if you needed a part 2, if this was too short. All of that information is helpful. Please respond to that survey. Virve will be sending out the link to the survey as well in an email that includes the slide deck from today's webinar. And we have also recorded this webinar, so you'll be able to access this on our webpage as well. So again, thank you everyone for finding time in your very, very busy schedules. Thank you to our presenters, Kelvin Potts and Jason Seals, and Positive Communication Practices. Keep an eye out for our NETA Part 2. I heard that. Yes. Keep an eye out for our announcements for our celebration and what that's going to look like, and what our the Father's Corps will look like moving forward for next year. So we appreciate you